All right. Okay. And here we are. And I'd like to say officially, welcome. Welcome to one and all. We have extended an invitation to you to join in our discussion today, a very important topic. Down for discussion, as you can see already, that I have guests with me, and we are graced with the presence of Mr. Arthur Pear. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mikey, and good evening to all your listeners.
All right, great. And we have Mrs. Nicole Johnson James. Welcome.
Thank you, Mikey.
Okay,
And hello,
and
everyone.
okay, welcome again. And we have with us Inspector Maureen John. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mikey, and good evening to everybody who is tuning in at this time.
Okay, great. So let's hit the ground running. The very important topic of sexual harassment in the workplace. I'd like to um, ask you, and we're going to start with Mr. Pear, and then we're going to go down to the others. When Mr. Pear, when you hear of sexual harassment in the workplace, what comes to mind?
It is inappropriate sexual behavior that exists within a professional setting or space that really and truly is unwelcomed, is creates problems between workers and creates some level of discomfort within the workspace. That is how I would view it.
Okay, great. Inspector Maureen?
I would agree with Mr. Pierre, and one of the things I would emphasize is that the behavior is unwelcomed by the person who is offended. And it happens, yes, within a professional space, and there is the belief sometimes that it has to be from a person in a position of authority exhibiting that behavior. But I believe now it is widely accepted that it goes across the board, irregardless of position. Once the behavior is practiced in a professional space and it is unwanted, then it amounts to sexual harassment.
Okay, thanks for that. And Mrs. James?
Well, all I can add is, of course, I agree with the definition that both my colleagues have given, and only to add that it's humiliating and it's offensive, right? And it causes distress for the target or the victim who is experiencing it.
All right. So thank you very much for all the explanation that you have given. So, what are the causes of sexual harassment in the workplace? I'm going to start with the inspector because I know that you might have heard a lot of scenarios and might be able to, come up with a few causes.
I think one of the first ones has to do with the same position that I spoke of before. Persons in positions of authority, especially, believe that they have a right, that they can do it, because they are in that position of authority, they can wager with, to put it that way. Additionally, I believe too it could be organizational culture and just the attitude among some of the offenders that I can do it. I am a big person. I am of that position. I am of that authority. So I can do it. So it's this kind of I can attitude. I will do it because I can do it. Organizational culture and position of authority. You are in the position where you can do it. I believe these are three of the main causes.
Okay. Anyone wanted to add to that?
Let me just quickly say this. Sometimes people disregard the level of professionalism that needs to be exhibited within the workspace. Now and I want to agree with the inspector when we talk about culture. We have been so it has been happening so often that it has become almost cultural And we believe that, by making dirty jokes, by providing videos, sharing video footage of nudity or whatever else, that as long as it is accepted by other colleagues, a lot of times we believe that it is the right thing to do at the right at that professional space, and I think that within that lies the problem.
Mrs. James, you wanted to come in there as well?
So I believe there is some level of disregard and disrespect for women, right? From the perpetrators. We can look at socialization, and some men are socialized to believe that we're sex objects and we're insignificant. Another thing would be power. The person has that power in the workplace, right? They may be a supervisor, they may be the head of the company, and so they can use their power because they know that the person probably they're not assertive because they have their targets, right? Men perpetrators of that kind of behavior rarely go after assertive women. Another cause can be, and it may seem strange, but women are rising in the workplaces, right? And we're climbing the ladder. And for some men, they are unable to accept that. So if I cause distress for her, she may become frustrated and she may just leave. Then we have victim blaming again. Arthur was talking about the culture. Oftentimes, when some women complain about being harassed, some people would talk about, but is the way you dressed to come there, or he was just making a joke, or they're using their perception of the individual's personal life to say, so what? Who are you? Sort of, right? So there is the victim blaming culture there, and then there is the bystander effect. People are there, they're witnessing it, and some people just feel, well, I have a lot at stake, so I would just hush, my mouth. And another big thing I believe is that a lack of policies in the workplaces that would speak against sexual harassment.
And to what degree does familiarity contribute towards this problem? For example, sometimes people are members of a village or a community before they are co-workers. So is that kind of familiarity breeding that that contempt against all women?
I
Um,
I want to say
Go ahead.
I sort of like want to agree, but guardedly, because respect is respect, and the relationship we have in the community, we can't necessarily bring that in the workplace. You have to have a certain level of professionalism there. So Arthur and I have worked together for years, and when Arthur and I meet, we speak certain ways to each other. But then when we're in certain settings and we're in a professional setting, I don't expect him to do this because I have boundaries. And as a man in a professional setting, he's supposed to respect those boundaries, right? But at the end of the day, we're talking here, Mikey, about sexual harassment. And from the start, the definition spoke about unwelcomed, unwanted behavior. So if we're good in the village, but you want to bring that kind of behavior of familiarity to the workplace, and I say to you, Mikey, no, I do not appreciate this. You need to stop.
Right, and I'm not saying, girl, why you playing?
Um,
Yes.
I'll tell you. You wanted to come in here?
yes, I just wanted to just to make a one point, and it is to defend men just a little bit, because we do have the issues of sexual harassment perpetrated by women as well, even within the workplace. Right now,
Right.
I can remember there was a case some years ago, and I wouldn't call the country, neither would I talk really and truly about the situation, but just to mention that a gentleman was sexually assaulted. This is not sexual harassment, but sexual assault. Okay, and the comments that were made was, why didn't he take that and cool it? Right? Why? I mean, why he protesting? Why is he complaining? Why is he opposing what was done to him as a man? He should be happy that the woman did that. Now we do have issues where women are themselves perpetrators, and sometimes because of the sort of ego that sometimes men have, they refuse to even mention, look, I'm not happy with this. I am. This is not welcoming for me. I'm not. I'm in disagreement with it, and that basically enables that sort of behavior even within the workplace. I just wanted to raise that point.
Okay. Inspector, yes, we are talking about the topic of sexual harassment, but we would like to put that into context to find out how much of a problem is that in Grenada, sexual harassment in the workplace.
I would say that it is a significant problem. And again, we would never know how significant because, as it was alluded to by Mr. Pierre earlier, for many reasons, persons choose not to speak about this issue. A lot of them, it's a matter of wanting to keep their jobs and not having another source of income. So if I speak up, and who is going to help me, and how am I going to feed my family and take care of myself? So I believe it is a very significant issue. Persons may speak about it in informal settings, may report it to a close friend or maybe close family member, but never make an issue about it at the job so that it is addressed in a meaningful way. But I believe it is a very significant issue in Grenada. And I also agree with Mr. Pear that there are men who allow this behavior to slide because of the egos and everything, the socialization again. Because men are supposed to be those kind of persons who do not shy away from sexual advances. You're supposed to accept all and sundry because you're a man. And
Right, right.
this is exactly how our young men are being socialized now. So you speak to school boys and you say to them, if a senior lady is making sexual advances toward you that you do not welcome, that you should report it, and they would laugh at that. I'm not going to report that. I'm a man. I'm supposed to accept that and move on. So it's all about, even though it is significant, people don't speak about it openly. They don't address it openly because of fear and insecurities, etc.
All right. So,
I just want to,
okay, go ahead.
if I may, if I may, I
Go
just
ahead, go
want to
ahead.
add one point that Brenda Lee made earlier, and I want to elaborate on it a little bit more. The issue of policy within the workplace. Now, one of the things that is really preventing us from really dealing with the issue of sexual harassment has to be sexual harassment laws. Now, we do not have laws that deals with the issue of sexual harassment. Now, in my research through the Caribbean, I think there are about 3 countries that actually have sexual harassment legislation dealing with that issue within the workplace. I think Belize is one, Barbados is one, the Bahamas, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. Jamaica is reviewing their laws currently, and I had the opportunity to look at the Belize law, and I think it is something that we must consider. The issue of policy, I am not quite sure how many companies, even maybe ministries and departments under government control, have those policies in place. They have a lot of other things, and by virtue of what they have established, may imply that they could deal with the issue of sexual harassment. But as it relates to a sexual harassment per se, there is no legislation on that.
Okay. And I can, any one of you can answer this question in terms of who would you say is most affected or mainly affected by sexual harassment in the workplace, and who are the main perpetrators?
Well, I think anybody could be a target or a victim. So it could be men to women and men to men. It could be women to men and women to women. But the statistics would show that it's mainly us as women are the ones who fall prey to that kind of behavior.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, Inspector, what's the statistics saying about persons who are reporting these cases? Who are you seeing coming more to report as being victim of sexual harassment in the workplace?
We hardly have persons report harassment in the workplace. What we would have are persons generally reporting sexual abuse, etc.
Assault.
We have had occasion, yes, where harassment in the workplace led to a sexual crime that was reported, but overwhelmingly, you would find females coming forward to report those incidents as being perpetrated by men, overwhelmingly.
Okay, Mr. Payne, this is James. I know that you have encountered people who have been victims of harassment, whether it is at the workplace or otherwise. What are the effects of that kind of advancement on its victims and society? What kind of effect it has?
Mikey, long-term effects, far-reaching effects. Now we're talking about women, and we're talking about a woman, or let me just use a woman having to have that experience in the workplace. For some, this woman might be somebody who has experienced some form of sexual assault before. So they may have been, as a child, abused, right? Now imagine being sexually abused as a young girl, a young woman. This goes untreated, which could be, to begin with, it's untreated at a level of trauma there, right? Because
Right.
trauma is not so much what happened, but it's our reaction to it. Okay? So then there is the trauma, there is it's left untreated for an extended period with the related symptoms, which could lead to post traumatic stress disorder. On top of this, you're in the workplace, and this gentleman or gentlemen are ever so often, as we would say, interfering with you. Um, Maybe in some cases trying to touch, because when we talk about sexual harassment, it's not only like different forms. They might be sending unpleasant sexual messages or emails and pictures or the things that they would say with their mouth. And we were talking about culture earlier on. Some of the songs that people jump and carry on to, they're just so disrespectful and demeaning to women, right? So you have to go into this workplace. It might be the boss. I can't complain, or I could complain if I use my voice, but I'm afraid to complain because, as inspector spoke about, my job is at risk. A lot of our women they're single women at home. They have to hold it down. So what do I do? I'm between a rock and a hard place. Go to work every day with this anxiety and keep my job, complain about this boss whose position is higher, who probably owns the company, who would believe me? And if they have to get rid of somebody, who would they get rid of? Right? Now, this sort of anxiety, untreated after a period of time, could lead to depression, of course. And this could interfere with the work politics. So the interpersonal relationship there with them and the co-worker, especially if they are tempted to report, and some people working for sucker points, so they on the boss's side, right? So you see how the conflict starts to begin. That's an additional pressure, and I can go on. It's just not easy for us as women and anybody to endure this.
And especially as you're alluding to, having to remain in that environment, how you
Yeah,
function, it
right.
becomes too tense.
That's
to even
right.
be productive and to wake up with the kind of exuberance or enthusiasm that one needs to be productive during his or
Yeah.
her workday. So,
Um,
do we have? You wanted to say something, Mr. Pear?
yes, yes, I just wanted to just put something into context. I think Brenda Lee gave a very, very good explanation of some of the issues, but I just want you to imagine a young female just getting work. So you're looking maybe a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old.
Right.
Her first, her first level of employment, and she is, as far as persons are considered, as far as she's considered, new meat on the block. I don't want to objectify, but I just have to use so that we could get the message across. New meat on the block, new blood on the block, and you have maybe a lot of males within that particular workplace targeting her. Imagine the stress and all the issues that Brenda just spoke about on her back. Now she feels intimidated. She does not know how really and truly to react. She doesn't know what really and truly she should do. How should she function under that sort of pressure? Should I comply? Is it going to threaten my job? Is it going to threaten my salary? What about my qualifications? Are they respecting me because of that? That is the pressure sometimes that a lot of our young females face within the
Right.
workspace.
And not just new workers, Mikey. Just to say
yes.
that here, there are some who are even just trainees. They're just in a
Right.
certain environment training for a
Right.
period of time and are subjected to kind of pressure. So you could imagine what the outlook is like for that young person now thinking about getting a job in such an institution after they have been trained. Is my dignity worth it? Is it worth
Right.
working in an institution like this where my dignity is compromised?
Right.
So it's not just those who are just training fall prey to these sorts of behavior.
Okay, and so let me ask this now: have our laws and policies within the workplace, if it exists at all, creating sufficient deterrence for that sort of behavior within the work environment?
Well, let
I
me just
would
take a
say
poke at
maybe
this.
no. I would say maybe no,
Okay.
because if it was acting as a deterrent, then we would have seen a reduction or we would have seen less tolerance for that behavior in workplace safety.
Okay.
And policies have to be working policies, policies that work, policies that an employee can safely say, if I am harassed at work sexually, I can take this course of action and I am confident that I am going to get redress. But I
Okay.
don't believe there is that confidence among employees that even though there is something in place, a policy, maybe some terms of reference, whatever the case may be, is it really going to work? If I make a complaint, am I going to be heard? Are the actions of the person going to be justified and I am left looking as though I'm a troublemaker?
Right.
Because these are some of the realities that exist as well. Am I going to be looked at as a troublemaker, or is this policy going to work? Is it going to get me the redress that I need if I make a complaint about this problem?
Okay.
And then if you go further to talk about the laws that exist, so many times we hear members of the public clamoring that the penalties for sexual crimes are not stiff enough. And even though the penalties are stiff, the perpetrators are not being meted out stiff penalties, even though they exist. So we wonder, is it worth it? There are some people who believe that even the processes that exist, when you make a complaint of that nature, sometimes the processes are so long and drawn out that by the time you get to the end of the process, you are so frustrated, you're wondering whether or not it was worth it to do that. So I believe there's a lot more that needs to be done in that respect.
Okay. I see that we are joined by Mr. Stroud. Good day to you, sir. Welcome to the program.
Hello, good evening, sir. Good evening to my colleagues. My apologies. Somehow I interpreted 6 to mean 6:30. But it's been a long day, so please forgive me.
Okay, no problem. You're welcome. We understand. So you heard the question, and we'll give you the opportunity to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I think the question very well. One has to be very careful, especially when you are dealing with situations that could be so fluid. It is not always easy for somebody. Conditions that exist that gives people, uh, if even it's the perception, and it may not necessarily sound the best way, but even if it's a perception of at least I am being heard, one, and I am not going to be judged simply because I felt or I interpreted a particular action meted out to me as offensive. And so, if we can make sure that we can have conditions and an environment that is like that, where people can be, people are free to be able to say, hey, listen, I did not like how this was meted out. I did not like this type of action. It felt as though I was harassed, and not be made to feel as though they were the criminals. They were the ones who actually were the ones who did something wrong. And I think
Right.
sometimes, too often, persons who stand up, even if in the end it's proven otherwise, that's not the issue. The issue is about the fact that people need to be given the space. People need to be given an environment in which they are free to say, hey, listen, I did not like this, and not be judged simply because they stood up and said I didn't like that. So that's the impact of that.
Okay, thanks for that. And I know Mr. Pear attempted to comment on that question. Mr. Pear, you still need to comment on this?
I just wanted to say that outside of policy, seeing that we don't have some policies in place, seeing that we don't have legislation in place, um, there are two things that needs to be done. We need to be able to have the conversation within the workplace and within whatever institution that is set up regarding sexual harassment. Secondly, while we have the conversation, we need to be able to draft policies. Thirdly, it is now the onus of every individual to understand that when you are within the workspace, the employment space, that certain behavior is expected of you. So you have a responsibility to be to be guarded when you're in your deliberations, what is conversations, in your interactions as it relates to the issue.
All right. Thanks for that explanation. Inspector, how can one report, instances or incidents of sexual harassment? Where do we go to make that report?
Should be within your work environment or according to the policies that are set out by your particular organization or institution.
Right.
Apart from that, if the sexual harassment has led to a criminal offense of some sort, then you can make a report to a police station or to CID, or in our case, I am from the Special Victims Unit and we receive those complaints there specifically as well. So if you believe that that sexual harassment has crossed the boundaries to the point where you believe that an offense has been committed against you, a criminal offense, you can seek redress from the law, of course, from the court, so that that perpetrator can be arrested and charged for the offense that was committed. And I can recall now for the period maybe December to this month of March, we have had two such reports made to us at the Special Victims Unit, where the incident happened on the job. Of course, they qualify as sexual harassment, but the victims believe that offenses were committed against them, and as a result, they had to seek further redress and made reports to our unit for investigation. So any police station, but of course, we specifically deal with those matters at the Special Victims Unit, so persons can feel free to report there as well.
What happens if that report or that complaint is against the higher level management, the owner of the company, the manager of the company, does it make a difference now how that is reported or handled?
No, it doesn't. We look at it as perpetrator and victim. Once all the evidence points to the fact that this actually happened, against that person.
Okay, we just missed the last 30 seconds of what you were saying. You're saying once there's evidence that this actually happened, we missed the rest.
Yeah, once there is evidence to prove that the action happened, that the offense was committed, whatever actions are to be taken against that person will be taken against that person.
What can co-workers do? And any one of you can answer this question as well. Or maybe we can go to Mr. Stroud. What can we do to hold our counterparts, our colleagues accountable for such behavior?
I think one of the things that we would have to hold on to is what Mr. Pierce said earlier on, that employers and employment spaces need to at least have a set of uh, a mode of practice or so that is set up so that people coming in know, hey, listen, this is what is acceptable behavior here. This is what is not acceptable behavior here. Because we don't necessarily have the laws. So I think what we need to make sure is to have, first of all, some form of parameter, some form of boundaries where people understand this is acceptable behavior, this is unacceptable behavior within the workspace. Outside of that, it is important for us, since in most cases, the persons who perpetrate sexual harassment tend to be male, and the persons who are victims of it tend to be female. In most cases, even though it can happen the other way around, I think as men, we need to then hold each other accountable and remind our colleagues when we maybe see them going in areas where clearly our those standards that have been set are being breached, or those boundaries are being crossed, and we need to hold each other accountable. But I want to say something also to the first question, or the question just before that, because I hear what the officer is saying, and she's right. I mean, I believe that she's coming from a space where that is indeed the case. So there's no criticism or any disagreement there. But I think even before we even get to the police, if the perpetrator happens to be somebody who is in senior management to you, that is extremely intimidating for anybody. And so it is not very easy for you even to say, make a report in house. So it is, in a lot of cases, the person will definitely reach out, and I guess that's how we will come to special victims unit and entities like that. Because who do you tell? Do you tell the manager that he interfered with you, that he harassed you? So that's a very difficult one for a lot of people, and it's a very serious situation for a lot of people who have been in those type of situations. So I think men have to hold each other accountable, remind each other as colleagues and as men that we, to hold to certain standards and boundaries. And also, I think employment spaces need to be able to establish particular work practices that are documented, that everybody knows that this is acceptable and this is unacceptable.
Can the company come up with some kind of strategies that they can implement both as a preventative method and an intervention where that topic is concerned? I'll leave this one open for any. Okay, I see Mr. Stroll.
But since I was on the floor, I'll continue, and of course, any other colleagues could go on. I mean, of course, you see, most of these type of social type situations, and I think my colleagues, I think I may share this view, but if they don't, they will be free to say otherwise. But I think most of these type of social type issues where people are, where behavior, when behavior, boundaries are to be placed on behavior, a lot of people just do not have the will. There is not a will. There is not a will to do. Sometimes it's because, as you would have alluded to, the persons who have to set the boundaries are the persons who are themselves the persons who are breaking them. And so there's no real great interventions, nor even boundaries set. So it is a very ticklish matter. But my take is that yes, of course, there can be boundaries established, and of course there can be interventions that can be documented within any workspace as to if this happens, this is what you do, this is who you go to, and these are some of the different types of interventions that can take place. But I would stop here.
Okay, thanks for that, Mrs. James.
So I'm thinking, as Mr. Schultz spoke about, oftentimes it's the boss, right? Or somebody at the helm, the top. We as women, we have to empower ourselves and we have to find our voices and we have to use it, right? So there may not be policies in place, but as a woman, I would have to assert myself and I would have to establish the boundaries. And whenever the thing happens, if it's said, maybe sometimes speak loudly enough so that other people could hear, what was said. Would there be repercussions? Yes. Would your job be at stake? Yes. We went through all of these things already and some of the psychological impact. But what do we do? Just sit there and allow it to continue? So we assert ourselves, we use our voices, we speak up, we set boundaries. I do not appreciate what you said to me. I do not like the way you looked at me and the gesture you made. Another thing is, as women, we could support each other more, right? So whenever these things are, the old talk break out in the office, that this one said this person is doing that, support each other more. And support doesn't mean you necessarily have to take a side, right?
Right,
You
right.
don't have to destroy the person, like get involved in the victim blaming and talking about, where she liked it. She waited so long. Why now is she complaining? So I believe those are the interventions that could take place. And where there are policies, we need to educate ourselves about it. Know what the laws are in the workplace, know what the do's and the don'ts are. And when these lines are crossed, you deal with it almost immediately. And again, I know I am probably speaking from a place of being a little more assertive, but when you a timid woman is faced with a situation like that, it would be easier said than done. And this is why support is necessary.
Right. Well
And
said,
if I
Mr.
should add one thing,
Yes.
Mikey,
Go ahead.
piggybacking on something that Mr. Stroud said, if somebody does not feel comfortable to complain within their workspace, then I believe a strategy that can be used would be to make some external institution or some external body available so that if persons are not comfortable within, then there would be some place that they can reach out to find that redress that they need, some place that is comfortable, some place where they feel safe and free from all the office drama, to put it that way. I think that's one of the other strategies that can be employed.
Okay, all right, thanks for that. And just as we get ready to wrap up tonight's program, I know that we have lost Mr. Pear. He did say that he had to go to another engagement. In fact, I think he was at a meeting when he stepped out to come to this program. I would like to hear from you before we go on a very topical issue. You laugh because I guess that's what you know where I'm coming from. It may not necessarily have to do with sexual harassment, but the whole Will Smith and Chris Rock issue. I would just like to get your opinions on it. We will start with Mr. Stroud first. Mr. Stroud, Mr. Stroud, I want to hear.
Why should I get involved in that?
Because I want to make sure I give you equal time. I mean, I know you came in a little late on the program, so
You're punishing me. You're punishing me. Okay, so in all honesty, I must admit I have not given much uh, um, eyes and attention to the situation. But I have heard of what happened. I got a little glimpse of an article that was written with someone who was able to express their views on it. I'll say this. Uh, I think as men, and there are many things that I have different views on Will Smith and so in general, and so it might be tainted with some of those views that I have generally about him and his
Right,
whole
right.
his marriage and the open marriage concept. So there are certain aspects of his life that in general for me, in my opinion and from my space, is unacceptable. All right, so that's right. But however, that being said, from my understanding, my slight understanding of this, is it seems as though the man felt that his wife was being targeted, his wife was being belittled, and he felt that he had in the moment, he lashed out to the person who was belittling his spouse. My view on that is that, especially as men and especially as black men, um, we are held, unfortunately or maybe unfairly, to a higher standard, in the sense that it is very easy for a black man to be seen just naturally as an aggressor, as dangerous, as the gambit. It goes on and on and on. Black men generally, and especially in an environment like the United States, it is the men and especially black men are seen as aggressive and violent, and it's unfortunate that he felt it was necessary at that time. And I guess it's in the heat of the moment that I'm making any excuses for him. I think he should have used better judgment. Um, and it's very unfortunate that, again, once again, those who have a narrative that black men are unthinking, that we are aggressive, our blood, our heart clears to the skin, have just been given another example in terms of their argument. So that's my view on Will Smith. Again, I must admit that I do have some very strong opinions as to his concept of what marriage and so on. But that's for another day. Yeah,
Well,
I'll stop it.
it's all part of the package, you know. He cannot be seen in isolation, you know. So I get you,
Yeah,
Mrs.
yeah.
James.
So, Mikey, I think this situation has to be sliced thinly, and we don't have the time to do that, nor do we have sufficient information, right? But if we just take it at surface, Chris Rock was out of timing, right? I think Jada has made it clear that she has a health issue and how uncomfortable it is as a woman, all of that, losing your hair and everything. And I think it was insensitive of him to use that as a joke. Okay? Well, men say they're protectors. I would love my husband to protect me well, that's how I see him anyway, as my protector on earth. To protect me in a situation. But I don't know that I want my husband to behave that way in that setting. He was violent, and I think he needed to be more regulated than he was, right? Jada had the face to show that I'm not pleased with what you just said. Will could have had a similar face, but then again, as Mr. Stroud said, we are 3 days old, away from the situation, talking about it, so we could sit down and say all sorts of things. I am not quite sure if this happened to me, what was going to happen, but I want to place on record, I don't condone the violence, like not at all. He could have protected her in a different way.
All right. Okay, Inspector.
Yeah, I too am kind of far from the situation. I've just seen little snippets and so on. But what I think that was lacking in the whole scenario is respect from both sides. from both parties. I think there was just a
Right.
total lack of respect from both sides, and these are not examples that our young people should be seeing so publicly displayed. And that's my take on it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's always a very, very warm discussion that we have. It pleases my heart to know that we still find a place in mainstream to have these discussions, because you often get the impression that they don't seem to matter anymore, and so I'm happy that we have been doing this, and partnering with different stakeholder organizations to get these interviews done, so at least we can keep these topics and these scenarios alive, so victims and perpetrators would know that something is being done about it. This session was a joint collaboration between Grand Chap and the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association, and we can look forward to more of these discussions. I don't know if any of you have any closing remarks. I'm going to start with the inspector first. If there's anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up tonight's program.
Two things I want to say. One, I want to agree with Mrs. James wholeheartedly that in the workplace, female colleagues need to stand with each other and need to speak loudly as it relates to sexual harassment. You may be the timid type, but it does not mean that you have to stay quiet. And if it means that you need support to get your voice heard, then get the support that you need to get your voice heard and say something. You may just be setting the way, you may just be paving the path for others to come behind you. So let the legacy that you leave as a female in your work environment be one that others can model afterwards. And I just want to sound out here a call to all Grenadians at the Special Victims Unit. We are there. We are there to investigate. We are there to support. We are there to assist other stakeholders in the fight against all forms of abuse, sexual abuse, and family violence. And we want you to feel free to call us. We also partner with the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association, GrenChap, and all the others. So we want you to feel free to call us, and we have a hotline number that you can call. You're going to be hearing more about it in the very near future, and that hotline number is 400. So feel free to call 400. Somebody will always be there to respond to your complaint. Thank
Thank,
you.
thank you very much for that. And of course, we are going to go over to Mrs. James now. Your closing remarks.
So, Mikey, I want to commend you and validate your effort for using your platform to do things like that. I mean, sometimes the media is just embarrassing, but it's heartwarming that you would use your platform to give us a voice, to give women, men, issues in Grenada a voice, okay? So kudos to you, more power to you. Again, I want to encourage my women folk, let us support each other in the workplaces. When issues of a sexual nature, sexual harassment come up, support. Again, support doesn't mean I have to agree or I have to take a side, right? But support. For those who have been experiencing it and you're suffering, never suffer in silence. Help is available to you. There are a few of us, counselors and so around, who are well trained, credible, ethical, and could provide support to just walk through your experiences and so. And the last thing I want to say is that wherever, as women, wherever I go, whatever I wear, my yes is yes and my no is no. If I feel offended by something you did and I ask you to stop and I say no, my no is no. So nothing else should be, no other condition should be attached to this. And for the perpetrators, I think they need help too. That is just some kind of deranged sick men. right? Who would engage in that kind of ongoing, because it's not a one-off situation that they would call it sexual harassment, right? You two need some help because we have to find help for them. If we do not help them, the problem will just continue. Okay? So, ladies, women, our yes is yes and our no is no.
Well said. Well said. Mr. Strong?
Yes, Mikey. I want to actually join with Mrs. James because since the last time when I was here with you, it's something that I really wanted to say, didn't get a chance to say. But as a young man, I admire you and what you do, and especially making sure that you use your platform to do positive things and the example. I know it's difficult these days to be a positive male. People don't see those things as things to achieve. Everybody wants to be a bad boy. So it's really excellent that a young male in our community is doing what you do. So I really commend you for that. And while I'm on that, the last thing I would say is, as men, we have to hold each other accountable. We have to be able to say to each other, "Listen, man, you're crossing the line here. This is unacceptable." And we have to be able to say that to each other. We have to be men enough to be able to look at our brothers in the face and say, "Don't do this." All right. And when we start doing that, I believe it will assist as we combine what Inspector said, as we combine what Mrs. James said, with the fact that other men are standing up and saying, "Hey, listen." And I think as men too, one of the best ways that we can help other men is to be the opposite of it, to not be the ones doing it. You have no moral authority if you're doing it too. So if you keep to a particular standard, you have the moral authority to look at them and say, "Well, no, you can't do that. That's not acceptable." Nobody say, "Oh, you just do that too." No, you can't do that. And so if we stand up by holding each other accountable, one, and by two, by being the example in our spaces, I think we would be able to do some work with each other.
All right, well said. I am happy that we had this conversation today, and judging from the comments on Facebook, it's a welcome discussion. And so I would like to thank you and all the partners, of course, for the initiative and putting this together and making sure that it's executed. So again, thank you very much, and we are looking forward, and I can say on behalf of our viewers as well, thank you for keeping these subjects alive, all right? We are looking forward to more of these discussions in the not too distant future. Thanks again, everyone. All right, and great. So, folks, that's where we're going to put an end to our program for today, and we are so happy that you were able to join us. We say, have a good one. May God bless you and your family. Take care.
Running low on groceries? Why not visit realvalueiga.com and experience our new online shopping platform? Place your order, then go out and enjoy your day to spend more time with friends and family. Free delivery available within select locations or in-store pickup available. Sounds simple, right? It is. Stress less, live more with Real Value IGA online store, where good food